From the NewsChannel 5 network, this is Open Line.
The American people have witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country.
From the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first.
If you have a pre-existing condition, heart disease, diabetes, breast cancer, they're coming for you.
Obamacare was a disaster, and the American people remember it well.
I'm Kyle Horan. Thanks for watching Open Line. The vice presidential debate. 57 to 59 million viewers reported by Nielsen ratings. The second largest, perhaps, vice presidential debate in history. We're here to discuss that tonight. We've got two people joining us, two people you may have seen on NewsChannel 5 before. We've got Representative Mike Stewart, Democratic Caucus Chairman, and also Representative Jeremy Faison, Republican Caucus Chairman, to talk about their thoughts. Guys, let's start with Representative Jeremy Faison. What do you think about this debate as compared to the previous presidential debate?
You know, they both actually did a better job than the two previous. My gut feeling of what I saw last night was actually really informative, was good. And I believe that Mike Pence knocked it out of the park, and he gave America a solid reason to stick with their team.
All right, we'll shoot it on over to Mike Stewart. What do you think?
You know, I thought, I disagree. I will say this, Vice President Pence's responses to some of the questions were really noteworthy. It was noteworthy that Vice President Pence still won't take any responsibility at all for the thousands of people that have died because of the administration's failed response to COVID. This is an area where, you know, in countries all across the world, very diverse countries, governments have used science and gotten control of this disease. The United States is an outlier because of its incredibly poor leadership, the poor leadership of President Trump and Vice President Pence. I also thought it was interesting that Vice President Pence actually would not agree when asked whether he would respect the results of the election. That was really a historic moment. I mean, here we've had President Trump saying that, and one wondered whether that was a Republican position or just this crazy outlier position of this particular president. But Pence was asked specifically whether or not he would respect the election, and he talked about a variety of things, voter fraud and whatnot. What he didn't say is, yes, of course, I'm an American and I will respect the will of the people. That was shocking to me, and I think to a lot of Americans.
Thank you, Representative Stewart. Back to Representative Faison's point. This was a much more calm debate. It was one where people were talking and actually answering questions. There was some interruption, but not nearly as much. And I would say probably the biggest takeaways, the biggest controversies from the debate were just the questions that were not answered. Representative Faison, you talked about Pence. You felt like he did a great job here in this debate. He was talking about the president's response to coronavirus, which is something that Senator Kamala Harris said that was not a good job, that 210,000 Americans have died. She called it the greatest failure in any administration's history. Do you have any thoughts about that, those words that she said?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, and Representative Stewart brought that up. And let's just break it down. The vast majority, over 2/3 of the people who have died to COVID, check me if you want, come from a Democrat-controlled state. New Jersey, New York, California. That's where the majority of the people have died because of COVID. And the interesting thing that I think we need to be fair, if we're going to hold President Trump and Vice President Mike Pence, we're going to hold their feet to the fire because of somehow they didn't do something right. The truth is he gave each state and each governor the freedom and the ability to make their own decisions of what was right for their country, which is important. That's what we believe we ought to have governing. And the truth is the New York governor failed miserably. And because of his failure and the way he did with nursing homes and long-term care facilities, That's where you're seeing a great amount of death coming from. Same thing with New York. Same thing with California. And then if you want to contrast and compare that to the states that are controlled by Republicans, actually, the mortality rate isn't as bad as the Democrat-controlled states. So I would just fundamentally disagree with Kamala Harris or any of the liberal side that's saying somehow Trump did something wrong when he did everything that Fauci asked him to do. And I would say, what would y'all have done different in the White House? So you're going to tell me that you would have done a mandatory mask mandate? Basically, you can do that in your state parks and in your federal buildings. If you're going to do, you can't force mask mandates anywhere. Or if we would have done a forced closure, we still have to have our essential workers working, our frontline people working who've done a phenomenal job. So, when I hear somebody say he's got blood on his hands or 200,000+ people, I just fundamentally reject that and say, I don't think you could have done anything else. And obviously, if you look at their plan, since Biden is struggling with plagiarism over the last 4 decades, he's obviously struggling with plagiarism with that because their plan is very similar to what Fauci and President Trump have done.
And Representative Stewart, I just wanted to kind of pose the same type of question to you. Also, wanted to just preface it with this. Vice President Mike Pence said that they were told when this first started by Fauci that there could be 2.2 million lives lost. And even if they did everything right, there still could be 200,000 deaths. So I kind of want to get your response to what Representative Faison just said, but also talking about that side, what Vice President Pence said about their response. That's a question meant for you, Representative Stewart. Looks like we may have lost him for a second. Would you like to take that question, Representative Faison? You want to talk about that part?
Kyle, once again, I would just say that it's easy to say, well, I would do this, I would do this. But the truth is, when you look at what the vice president is saying he would do, Joe Biden, Vice President Joe Biden saying what he would do, it's very similar to what's already been done. And to think that we're going to say we've lost 200,000 because we didn't do right. The truth is President Trump did something unprecedented. No other president's done. He shut the country down when the liberals were saying he was being xenophobic. He's the one who did that. So there's just, the truth is not on the liberal side when they say the president stands at fault for these lives. The truth is the Democrat states and Democrat-controlled governors, they have more blood on their hand than anybody in the White House does.
Representative Stewart, do you want to respond to that? I know we lost you for a second. I don't know how much of that you caught.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay.
It was my computer. It's just not accurate what Representative Faison says. I don't think there's a health professional in the world that suggests that the Trump administration has done a good job. And I think you have to compare nation to nation. Other nations have gotten this under control, large nations, small nations. Our nation is almost unique in the ineffectiveness of its response. And of course, there are things that the Trump administration could have done. The Trump administration could not have told the American people that this was no big deal. The president himself could not have told the American people with no basis in science that this would all clear up in the summer somehow miraculously. The Trump administration has undermined every governor in the United States, one, by not having any national program, two, by providing information that was unscientific and false. There's no other country in the world that has responded in this way. And to Representative Faison's point, what could the Trump administration have done? It could have done what other countries done, immediately devoted the resources to provide contact tracers and resources to get the disease under control when it first arrived on our shores. That's not the job of a governor any more than fighting a war is the job of a governor. It has to be a national approach. That's not to say that governors, mayors, state representatives, and others can't pitch in. But if you've got complete mission failure in the White House, then everybody else has to just have a patchwork response. So I think the American people aren't stupid. They know that President Trump said what he said. They know this administration did not take COVID seriously, and they see the consequences. And that's one of the reasons that President Trump's time as president is rapidly coming to an end, and thank goodness for the country.
And just to make this clear to all the viewers just now tuning in, we have Representative Mike Stewart, the Democratic Caucus Chairman, and Representative Jeremy Faison, the Republican or GOP Caucus Chairman here in the state. Just wanted to clarify, Representative Faison, you believe that Vice President Mike Pence won the debate, and Representative Mike Stewart, you believe that Senator Kamala Harris won the debate. Is that correct?
Oh, clearly, and I think most of the American people polled agree with me.
The interesting thing when you bring up polling is even our own very good friend Phil Williams, look at his polling. It's obvious that when you realize you're voting for a president, you're actually voting for a potential vice president that could be one heartbeat away from being the president. And America saw last night that she wasn't capable of even representing very well a United States senator, much less a vice president. And Vice President Pence was stellar. He was poised, he was controlled, he was strong, and he proved to America time and time again last night that he could do it. Interesting thing with Frank Luntz, if you ever watch Frank Luntz, he had an independent group of voters have never made up the decision. Even Frank Luntz group, who often has gone either way. But last night, they overwhelmingly came out and said, Pence got it.
I think Frank Luntz is a good reference. Chairman's referring to a Republican operative who for years has been crafting a Republican talking points, and I would say has done more than any other person to bring dishonesty into politics. And what you saw last night with Vice President Pence is someone who had no difficulty just looking the people in the eye and either avoiding direct questions or simply saying things that were not true. And in that, of course, he's forced to support his president, President Trump. And so to some extent, he's playing follow the leader. Once again, I thought the most amazing thing that happened last night is when Vice President Pence clearly was directly asked, are you going to respect the results of the election? And would not answer that question directly. That's a new phase in our country's history, and we've got national leaders undermining our political process and saying they won't respect it. I'll say one thing: I respect elections, and I know Chairman Faison does. And this is something American people should think very carefully about when they go and cast their votes. Is we have leadership now that is essentially undermining the democratic tradition in our country that we respect elections no matter who wins. And that alone, I think, calls into question whether President Trump and Vice President Pence are really fit to serve in the offices they serve in, whether they're really a choice that Americans should make. I think clearly the answer is no.
I want to bring one thing up. I mentioned in the beginning of the show, just based on which articles you look at, it was either 57 to 59 million people that watched that vice presidential debate. That's the second largest in history. Do you believe that, well, let's just ask, what do you believe is the reason for that? We'll start with Representative Faison.
Thank you. Just real quick, I do want to bring up the notion that there was lying. Senator Harris was completely infactual many times. But I do believe that America is hungry and they want the truth. And they're looking right now for what's going to take place the next 4 years in their life. They're looking for men and women who can lead this country out of an economic depression where we are, and then how we can do better with COVID. And so they're very interested to see what's going on. And I think that's what brought them about. I think people were frustrated with the first debate, and they're thinking, let's see if the vice presidential debate is going to be as rocky as the presidential debate. And so I think there is a great amount of interest, and to knowing who exactly is in the office right beside the Oval Office.
Would you like to take that, Representative Stewart?
Yeah, and I do agree. I think Chairman Faison and he and I debate quite often on the floor, and I agree with him. I think Americans are hungry for change. I think they're very focused on this election. I think that most Americans can use common sense and see that this administration has failed in its most important challenges. Americans aren't stupid. They know that other countries have gotten COVID under control. The Trump administration has not. They know what President Trump said about COVID early on when he had all this information. I mean, at the end of the day, the Trump administration, Representative Faison criticized Senator Harris and also President Obama for its healthcare programs. Of course, the Trump administration had no healthcare program. Its only healthcare program was to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, eliminate the protections for citizens with pre-existing conditions, essentially to just move the clock backward. So, I mean, this is an administration that has no coherent plan, has had no coherent policy or plan to do anything other than to create massive deficits and hand out all the money, all the treasury, hand out all the money from the treasury to the wealthiest Americans. It's a terrible policy, and it's the only policy that the Trump administration has pursued with any significance other than its failed policy with regard to COVID. So, I mean, this is an administration that's been a failure, and I think many Americans tuned in last night because they're interested to see change, and I think we'll see that shortly.
We're 15 minutes into the hour, and I've taken notes on all of the topics that we have to cover. They had 90 minutes to debate. We've got 48 minutes to talk about this, and I'm through page 1 of several pages. So what I want to do, it looks like you have one thing to say, Representative Faison, so I'll let you say that, and I'd like to take a question too.
Okay, I just wanted to bring one more thing up. When it comes to not answering questions, I think one of the most profound moments of the debate last night and the previous debate is when it comes to packing the court. And obviously we don't want to insult anyone's intelligence, but I've asked several, just the average voter in Tennessee, do you understand what packing the court means? And so let's just speak about that just briefly. We're saying that we're going to take an unprecedented thing in the United States Supreme Court and put enough liberal or left-wing judges on there to overturn anything else. So as soon as if Vice President was sworn, if Biden was sworn in as president, one of their first things that they would want to do is pack the United States Supreme Court. Guys, that's incredibly disingenuous to America, and it's unprecedented, and it would bring about a cabal that we wouldn't be able to overturn. And so as far as not answering questions, I think that's profound that neither one will answer the question, are you wanting to pack the court? And I think Americans need to hear the truth from them before they go to the polls on November 3rd. Are we voting for a man who's fixing to do something unprecedented with the United States Supreme Court and put enough members on it that we can get what we want out of there? We can take your guns, we can do this, we can do whatever we want to do if we put enough liberal jurists on the Supreme Court.
We're absolutely going to get to, thank you. We're absolutely going to be bringing that topic up. But what I want to do is I want to take a question from our phone lines really quick, and either of you can feel free to answer this. So we're starting off with Mike. Mike, can you hear me?
Going to be bringing that topic up. But what I want to do is I want to take a question from our phone lines really quick, and either of you can feel free to answer this. So we're starting off with Mike. Mike, can you hear me?
Mike, we're having trouble hearing you. Do you have us on speaker?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, my question is, how can the Democrat Party hold Trump responsible for a national mandate? You're comparing Nashville to Big Sandy, Tennessee. That is why he said it's up to the governors and the mayors to make their own choices.
Okay.
Yes or no?
Representative Stewart, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sir, and I'm not sure it's a yes or no question, but the answer is no. The President of the United States, the President of the United States, is the person with the most power and the most tools to respond to a global pandemic. And the President of the United States, in this case, not only failed to do that, But he not only failed to take responsibility, not only failed to muster the federal government to respond, but even worse, made the problem worse by spreading misinformation about the disease to Americans. So no, I mean, the President of the United States should have taken responsibility for responding to this dire threat to our country, and he failed completely. And it's not a job that a mayor or a governor can handle alone, because a mayor or a governor can't control all of the sources of COVID entering and leaving his or her jurisdiction. It's a national problem. It's a national threat. And what we had was a complete failure of national leadership.
Representative Faison, you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Kyle, and excellent question. I just want him to realize, and also my colleague, Chairman Stewart, Dr. Fauci, who has won and earned the respect from everybody in America across the aisle, Democrats and Republicans alike, he has said on multiple occasions now that President Trump did everything he was encouraged to do. And he's done as good as a president can do. And when Dr. Fauci, who has obviously been very cozy, if you will, with Democrats, is he saying that? Either we're going to trust the experts and the doctor who's been in the room, or a politician. I'm going to stick with the doctor who's been in the room and who's seen all the data. And when he tells me that the president has done what he suggested, I'm going to believe that. And furthermore, we're the land of personal accountability. We're the country that we believe in individual freedom and personal liberty. And I believe that President Trump and Governor Lee have struck the right balance between what the government can do and offer and what you are responsible for yourself to do for yourself. Wear your mask. Be careful. Be vigilant. Wash your hands. Don't be in crowded places. That Americans are smart to figure this out their own. They don't need a dictator in the White House to force you to do something beyond your will. So I just want to say, along with Dr. Fauci, President Trump has done a great job with this, and so has Governor Lee.
All right, let's take one more phone call.
First of all, Dr. Fauci. Oh.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, Dr. Fauci has not said that. And Dr. Fauci, of course, has in many cases been, and Dr. Fauci has in many cases found it very difficult to answer questions about President Trump's actions because they were so incoherent and inexplicable. I would also say, I think Chairman Faison is kind of looking backward. He's saying, yes, now, he's arguing that now, given the disastrous COVID response by the Trump administration, now that COVID has spread throughout the United States, we should have a discussion about mask wearing. That's beside the point. The point is, other large countries mustered their resources and got this virus under control very quickly. The United States, which should be the world leader, the United States, which typically the world has looked to under its prior leadership for leadership and showing the way with respect to science and technology and solving major problems, the United States under this administration is unique in its failure. And it has nothing to do with what we're talking about now. The fact is the Trump administration, when it had the chance to nip this in the bud in the way that other countries did, completely failed because President Trump didn't use national resources to address it. And now he's trying to use arguments about responsibility and arguments about sending power down to the states as an excuse for his obvious failure. And that's the problem. The fact of the matter is the United States, with all of our technology, with the best medical systems at hand, with all of the funds available to respond aggressively, could have nipped this crisis in the bud, could have done what South Korea, our ally, did, which is immediately provided armies of contact tracers to trace the disease and snuff it out early in its infancy. Of course, the Trump administration provided no such leadership, completely failed, and now they're trying to come up with one excuse after another to talk about why they lost this war. What they should have done is fought it in the first place.
Okay.
And Kyle, obviously we know it's not possible to snuff this out, or he said nip it in the bud, because it's still prevalent throughout the entire world. And so to lead the general public, and what my good friend Chairman Stewart just said, that we could have somehow nipped this in the bud, that's foolishness. And you know that, Chairman Stewart. This is not possible to nip this in the bud. And South Korea hadn't nipped it in the bud. No country has nipped it in the bud. So I just fundamentally reject that.
Okay.
Well, I guess we have a factual disagreement that now I'm not comparing the country of New Zealand to the United States, which is a much larger, more diverse country, but the country of New Zealand has no COVID cases. The country of China, which is a totalitarian regime, which in most ways is a basket case compared to the United States, which doesn't have nearly the resources of the United States. Yet the country of China got this under control. And the South Korea has gotten COVID under control. South Korea, a diverse, free country like ours, in many ways patterned on the United States, has gotten COVID largely under control. Are there some cases? Yes. But do they have vast, uncontrolled COVID from coast to coast in their country? Of course they don't. So that's a country, South Korea is a country that patterned many of its governmental institutions after our own. The difference is in South Korea, they have competent and effective leaders that care about their people. And the fact of the matter is, President Trump was totally incompetent. He failed miserably. He told the people of the United States openly that this was no big deal, that it would disappear. His administration sat on its hands. They didn't create testing. They didn't trace the disease. They didn't provide governors the help they need. Now they want to talk about everything other than their failure. So it has nothing to do with what we're talking about masks today. Now the disease is all over our country. Fact is, other countries where people took charge and showed leadership got this thing under control. And we did not. And it's shameful because the United States has always been the leader when responding to these sorts of things. Now, unfortunately, we've fallen behind.
Representatives, really fast. We do have to throw to break here soon.
Okay.
We have plenty of time to talk. I feel like we're on the House floor. I'm part of the Capitol Press Corps.
Okay.
For some people who will watch. I love hearing from you guys.
Okay.
I know you can do this forever.
He's about to agree with me, so give him just 1 minute. He's going to agree with me.
I feel like I'm moderating a debate right now. Should I give you 15 seconds? 15 seconds. No.
Thank you, Kyle. Just the notion of bringing up China and any records or numbers from China, my gosh, this is where the disease come from. Do you think they're going to be honest with the reporting? So let's go to commercial break and continue this afterwards.
I feel like we should just go to commercial break right now. Thank you so much, Representative Faison. We'll be right back. We're going to take more calls. We've got callers on the line. We will get to you, I promise. Thanks for watching Open Line. I'm Kyle Horan.